So the AI model war has just changed, not because one new model has won, but because this week's biggest stories all point beyond that leaderboard. Claude is now generally available in Microsoft Foundry. Kimi has unveiled a vast open multimodal model, and Capital is moving towards specialist inference chips. Search is turning answers into actions, and Europe's AI transparency deadline is nearly there. So we put all of those signals together, and the real competition is no longer simply who has got the smartest model. It is actually who can run the right model under the right controls at the right costs and let it take the right actions. So let's jump on in. Welcome to AZ Bytes, everybody. It's the AZ Bytes Weekly AI Focus. My name's John Lunn, and in the next 10 minutes, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to rank all the signals of the last week and separate all that fact from vendor claims and turn all the headlines into practical moves that we can help each other learn and share and demonstrate and apply all that great knowledge to all the AI world that's out there at the moment. So here's the scene. Model capability is improving so quickly at the minute that the strategy built around one permanent winner is already very brittle, okay? So the durable advantage here is becoming operational. So look at the evaluation, model routing, any identity, data boundaries, all that monitoring and observability. Make sure we get those costs controlled. And basically work on those systems and be able to evidence every part of that system as you build it, and so that you can ensure it's going to behave as you intend. So this week we've got 5 different views of that same theme and that same shift. So let's jump on in and see what we've got. So first up, signal 1 is Claude is becoming generally available in Microsoft Foundry. You know, the verified Microsoft announcement has kind of said that customers can still access Claude through their existing Azure account. They can use Microsoft Entra ID and Azure role-based accessible controls. They can choose a global or a US data zone at the moment and track all that consumption through the Azure management and billing. You know, Claude usage appears as Claude consumption units for those Azure bills. With Microsoft Azure consumption commitments, those Mac drawdown commitments are absolutely supported now. So Microsoft has also said that zero data retention is available for high sensitivity workloads. So prompts and completions are not retained by Anthropic after any API calls. So there's an important architectural detail here, okay? Inference is processed in Azure, while Anthropic operates the inference, and it's the data processor and the service level agreement provider, okay? That's the important distinction. So that really matters when you talk about security, the legality, and the procurement teams all kind of come together to assess who has the responsible part for that jigsaw. So generally available doesn't mean it's a magic compliance stamp. It's just a production path, and it's got those clearer controls in place. You can get those contracts and ownership boundaries set up straight away. So what this means for business leaders, the benefit is really procurement speed, reduced integration friction between your business units. And for technical teams, it's really about another frontier model available inside that already existing governance plane, so Azure. The golden nugget here is not just use Claude for everything, but it's that the model diversity becomes practical when you've got all of that identity, policy, billing, evaluation, and monitoring in place, because they all remain consistent around the model. Okay, so next up, Signal 2, Kimi K3. Moonshot AI describes it as a 2.8 trillion parameter natively multimodal model with a 1 million token context window. It uses a mixture of experts design, which is a known plan, that really activates 16 out of a total of 896 experts. The company is saying that full weights are going to be released by the 27th of July 2026. And they really are extraordinary engineering claims, to be honest. But, you know, keep everything attached here. They come from the vendor's launch material, which is going to be quite good. And Moonshot itself says that K3 is still trailing as the strongest proprietary systems, you know, overall at the moment. So that caveat is quite a healthy one, in fairness. So benchmark wins don't automatically transfer to your documents, your code base, latency target, or risk profile. But Kimi also documents its own limitations, which is great. So including things like sensitivity to preserve thinking history and a tendency towards excessive proactiveness. Maybe that's something I lack. So in other words, the model card is really telling you that you can harness design and explicit behavioral boundaries, and that they really matter, really. So the enterprise implication here is bigger than in this one release. Okay, so open models are really closing gaps quickly enough now to put pressure on those premium pricing and model lock-in vendors. So a 2.8 trillion parameter sparse model, it's not free AI, okay? It's you still got the serving architecture, the accelerated topology, all the caching, the throughput, the energy, the operational skills. They're all going to shape that overall cost. So really look at that entire system if you want to use these models. Don't just think it's merely a download and you're going to be cracking on there, okay? So really, this gives us the decision, really, about an entire stack for every serious workload. So don't just think models. We're thinking quality, latency, cost, and governance. We're going to test all of those areas with our own data, and we're going to come up with our own kind of understanding. We're going to route work deliberately so that we know what we're getting back. We're going to a high value reasoning task may justify one of the premium frontier models, whereas a high volume classification flow may favor one of the smaller or maybe even one of the open models. So a sensitive workflow may narrow some of the availability of models to particular data zones, and look at those retention options as well. So this is where we're going. Model choice simply, it should be a policy decision backed by evidence for your business, not just a developer making up its mind as part of a particular code base and you being locked into that code base. So really start talking about these things in your business today because they do matter and they will matter a lot. Okay, next up, Signal 3 is the economics underneath the models. Okay, so TechCrunch is reporting that General Compute secured $400 million loan from Upper 90. It's using Inference-specific chips as collateral. The report is presenting that, as an early signal that capital is organizing around infrastructure, which is designed to serve trained models effectively rather than only around the graphics processors used to train them, if that makes sense. So don't turn this one deal into a universal market law. Okay, the claimed performance benefits come from the companies involved, and this remains an emerging signal, really. But it's strategically relevant to where we are today. So if open model demand grows, buyers will care about tokens per pound, right? Power, cooling, deployment speed, hardware flexibility, all that stuff. So the next competitive layer may be the serving fabric beneath the model catalog, which is essentially where we're starting to see things turning now. Next up, Signal 4 is all about action. Okay, so Google says connected apps are beginning to roll out in AI mode in search in the US. Its example is quite a simple one. Plan a barbecue, for example. You connect it to a shopping cart. You add your ingredients to a basket. And then the complete checkout is done in the app or the website. The important point here isn't about grocery shopping. It's really that transition from an answer surface, so where are you getting where you're going, to that action surface. So making sure that's all compliant and secure and reliable, essentially, is that shift from answer to action. So OpenAI can change state in another system. Accuracy is only really the start of this. You need explicit consent. You're going to need least privilege permissions. There've got to be some kind of transaction boundaries here, confirmation of any of those consequential steps that are going to be taken. Idempotency is going to be a thing. Error handling and auditing these capabilities are all going to be a thing that we need to be thinking about. So an agent that writes to a basket is pretty convenient, yes. An enterprise agent that writes to a finance system, an operations system, or a customer support system, it's going to need that control plane, okay? We're going to build AI APIs for machine consumers, essentially, but we don't ever want to confuse easy connectivity with safe autonomy. So keep that in mind as you go through this transition. Okay, next up, Signal 5 is the deadline that turns governance into delivery work. So the European Commission says that the AI Act's transparency rules come into effect in August 2026. So people should be informed when they're really interacting with any machine where required. Providers of generative AI must ensure that AI-generated content is identifiable, and certain content, including deepfakes, and any public interest text, must be clearly labeled. So, the Commission's page also says that the Act becomes fully applicable on the 2nd of August 2026, with specified exceptions and later dates for some high-risk systems. So, avoid that lazy statement to say that every AI obligation arrives on day one, because it doesn't, but just map the rules to what role you're doing in your organization. look at the use case and systems. The practical message here is still urgency, but that transparency can't live only in that responsible AI slide deck that you're all knowing and love. It's now coming into action. So teams are going to need to implement that evidence. Okay, so where is that disclosure shown? How is the generated content marked up? Who's going to own the control? What's going to be logged, how it's going to be logged, how it's going to be tested after there's a model update for completeness and evidence. So, what happens when all of this content crosses channels or suppliers? Those questions really connect directly back to this governed model choice. So, because changing a model must not silently remove all of those controls that you've built up and put around it, okay? So, three things to remember, everybody. Firstly, model diversity is becoming normal. Claude's Foundry availability shows how platform controls can make that diversity usable now. Second, Kimi and the Inference financing signal show us why capability and unit economics must really be started to be evaluated together now. And thirdly, action-taking AI and Europe's transparency milestone makes permissions, auditability, and evidence part of the whole product, not just that paperwork after the launch. Okay. So there we go. Here are your 4 moves for this week. Right, what can we learn from? Read Kimi's limitations as carefully as its benchmarks. Okay. Then review the European Commission's transparency guidance. Check out the links below. Next up, what can we share? Use that Claude announcement to start a real conversation around governed model diversity. Speak to your teams about it, bring up your peers, and understand what does this mean for your business. A single model is not a sales pitch. It's the system and the platform around it. From a demonstration point of view, what can we show? So run one representative workload across more than one model in your organization. Compare that quality. Look at the latency between them. Check out the policy and the cost. Make sure they fit your organization. And finally, what can we apply? So add disclosure, content identification, permissions, and audit evidence to your current AI discovery checklist today, because you're going to need to look at that soon. So there we go. The model market is going to keep moving as it always does. Your operating discipline has to outlast that leaderboard. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching. If this weekly AI focus helped you make sense of all the noise over the last 7 days, give this video a little like, subscribe to AZ Bytes, and tap that bell notification. Share it with somebody building an AI strategy around your favorite model, because this is the week to widen the lens. My name's Sean Lund. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next weekly AI focus. Bye for now.